that was a whole nother experience because I had been exposed to COVID, and I was in the waiting room and I felt like a warmth come over me. Like it was like all around here, it was like straight warmth. And then every cramp, every ounce of anything went away. And I sat there in that waiting room and I cried because I knew I had been healed. Like in that minute, I knew that my body was healed. I felt it. It was so, like, it was God. And I like physically felt his hand on my womb. And so when I got back there, I had passed the most blood that I had, like, combined. And they did the ultrasound and the baby was gone. And I was so confused, but I was also like insanely numb.
Welcome back to Season 2 of the Dare to Love podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Holloway, and you are listening to Beauty from Ashes, where I have guests on to share how God brought them out of a deeply painful situation and turned it into something beautiful. Today's guest is Marianne Southerland, and she's going to be sharing how God helped her get through a miscarriage. I hope you guys enjoy. Marianne, just tell me a little bit about yourself, about your family, your background.
Yeah, so I grew up in a really small town in Virginia and then went to North Carolina for college. So I met my husband in college like a week after I moved in as a freshman. And we stayed in North Carolina for a little while and then got married after we both graduated, and then literally got off the plane from our honeymoon and moved down here to Georgia. So we didn't know anyone. It was pretty crazy, but my job sent me down here, and we have been here for about like 5 years now. And we have a son. His name is Leeds, and he is 16 months old. And then we are due with a baby girl the first week of September.
That's awesome. I'm a September baby.
You are?
Yeah. I love hearing, like, I was like, every time I hear a September baby, I'm like, I hope they're born on my birthday.
Yeah, well, it's cool, but it's also like not fun, like being pregnant in the summer.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Never been pregnant, so
it's rough.
I haven't experienced that yet.
It's rough.
So you said, you're pregnant now and you have a son, but I really want to talk about, just like share your testimony on your experience with infertility and all of that, and as far as like how it affected your family and things like that. So if you could just tell us a little bit about the beginning stages of when you first got married and how that affected you when you first got married.
Sure, yeah. So we, I think because we did everything like so quickly, our marriage was like really rough in the beginning, which is like a whole nother thing for another day. But I mean, we were in and out of therapy like our whole first year of marriage, and it was really rough. So thankfully, like we just had really great counsel and a good group of people and a really good therapist that really just helped us along that process. And so we got to like a really healthy place in our marriage, and everything was going great. And about 2 years in, I had to go to the doctor because I was experiencing like tremendous pelvic pain. Like I could barely breathe without like my whole body just hurting. And so I went to the doctor and she ran a bunch of tests, and turns out that I had a very, very intense form of PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And a lot of women have PCOS. But she said, like, mine was so bad so what it is like you basically have cysts on your ovaries. But mine was so bad that you couldn't even see the ovary. Like all you could see was like all the cysts. And so they pulled me back in the room and they were like, are you like trying to get pregnant? And I was like, no, I'm not, And she said, okay, well, when you do try, it's going to be pretty much impossible to do naturally. So you're going to want to come back in and we're going to need to discuss like IVF and different fertility options. And I'm sitting there overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to get this pain out of my
Right.
like pelvis. I didn't know that all of this was going on. And so, but at the same time, I wasn't trying to get pregnant. So it was like just this weird feeling of I got in the car and I was crying hysterically. And I called my mom and I was like, I don't understand. And, but I was also like, okay, well, I don't really have to deal with this right now, like let me focus on what I need to do for PCOS. So I started like dieting and doing a bunch of stuff because I'd also like gained so much weight, which is a symptom of PCOS, that like you can do all the things, but your body just naturally gains weight. And so I started like following all these blogs of how can I make this like better for myself. And then that July, so that was in like February, and then that July, I was super sick, like insanely sick. I had lost, I think I had lost like 15 pounds in a month, and then I had lost 25 pounds total, and I was feeling awesome. I was feeling so good. And then July, I was just like knocked on my feet sick. And a symptom of PCOS too is that you don't have regular periods. So I was almost 8 weeks pregnant in July and had no idea. So I went to, I remember I stayed home from church, and Blake went to church, and I was just like super sick, and everyone was like, oh, Marianne's pregnant. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, like I can't be, So Blake got home, and sure enough, I was pregnant. And at first, it was like not the reaction you would think. Yeah. Like I was like, oh crap, like what are we gonna do,
Yeah.
Because we just weren't ready for that. And so I had a pretty healthy pregnancy up until the end. I had preeclampsia. So my whole body like swelled up. I had super high blood pressure. And so I actually had my son 3 weeks early because of that. But along the way, I learned like how much of a gift pregnancy was, because it was a gift that I didn't know that I would ever really have. Mm-hmm. And so I just learned to have such an appreciation for it. And like my son is honestly the best thing in the whole entire world. Yeah. Like he's amazing. So
yeah, I could see that being like kind of shocking as well, because you were planning on not or having time to prepare for a baby, and then all of a sudden you find out you're pregnant. It's like I could see that being like pretty shell-shocking and like just a surprise.
Yeah. Well, and we had like all these plans. Like we were going to go to Peru that next year. Literally, we were going to go to Peru for 2 weeks, the month that my son ended up being born. And, we just had like all these dreams of like, oh, we're just going to enjoy this for a little bit longer. And it was such a blessing that I didn't know that I needed, that obviously, God had for me.
Yeah.
Which was really good.
Yeah. So then that, like, if you fast forward to your second pregnancy and kind of that, how that happened, and it was during COVID and all of that. So
yeah, so we I loved being a mom, and I never really saw myself as naturally like being a mom. I always knew that I wanted to be a mom, but it wasn't like, you talk to some women and they're like, oh my God, I just feel like I'm just destined to be a mom, and like that's my ultimate calling in this life. I never felt that. I always knew I was going to be one, but my identity like wasn't wrapped up in like this idea of motherhood. And once I became a mom and like felt that love for my son, I was like, oh my God, I want another. Like I want tons. Like I'm like, now I want 4 to 5 kids. I want this big family. Yeah. And so when my son was, I think 7 months old. Yeah, 7 months old. Which was October of last year, we started trying for a second. And I was like, I have no idea how I got pregnant with Leeds. so quickly. So like, let's go ahead and try, because we have no idea how long like this is going to take, because my PCOS didn't go away. Like, it's still there. So we got pregnant on the first try.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is what God has for me. Like, he wants me to be a mom. And so then I walked into like this like true calling of like, I am meant to be a mom, because I've been told that I couldn't be on my own. And obviously like my body can, and it's able to do this. And so I just leaned into that so much. And I'm like, man, this is exactly what God wants for me. And it was such a peaceful like revelation, because I had never really felt that. And so we were so excited. We were just over the moon, and we thought about how close they'd be in age and how fun it would be. And, all the planning began, and everything was great. So then the first week of December, I had started spotting, and I called my OB, and it was like on a Sunday. And so I left a message, and then that Monday morning I called, and they were like, okay, we can, get you in this afternoon. Just check everything. And then that morning my husband woke up, and he was not feeling well, like at all. And he's a pharmacist. So in order for him to go back into work, he had to go get a COVID test. So his test was positive for COVID. And that day I had to call the OB back and just say like, hey, my husband has just tested positive for COVID. I'm supposed to be coming in this afternoon. And so it was just this big fiasco. We took our son in, and my 9-month-old son had COVID too.
Oh my gosh.
I did not, by a miracle of God. I don't know how. But so my husband's in the basement. I'm quarantined. I go to the doctor that Monday afternoon, and she was like, okay, well, we're going to have to make you the last appointment of the day and follow all of these protocols, which I totally understand and respect. But I think when like you're in a situation where there's so much fear and anxiety, and I don't know what's going wrong. Is my baby okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then you feel like, so isolated, and like that nobody wants to come and talk to you. I mean, like people were literally coming into my room, like in like full blown, like hazmat suits. I don't even know what they're called,
Yeah.
But, and I'm like, it was just so scary. And so they did an ultrasound, and that Monday afternoon, and the baby was there, heart beating. And I had so much relief, and like my faith was very much like restored, and because I was so scared. And so I went home, and I'm trying to take care of my son who's sick, and it just got so much worse. Without getting too graphic, it just like went way downhill from there. And Tuesday I woke up, and it was just like terrible pain throughout the day, and just everything had gotten worse. And so Tuesday evening I texted my OB, and I was like, hey, everything's gone worse. Like, what would you do? And he said, I think you should go to the emergency room. And so, as a Christian, like this whole time I'm going through this, I'm like, God, I know you're faithful. I know that you've promised these things to me. And I know that by your stripes we're healed. And I have confidence in that. But it was a lot of wavering confidence. And I think like when you're in a situation like this, spiritually you want to be like, just have faith. Everything's going to be okay. Like God is for you. And all of that was good to hear. But it was also frustrating, because it was like, I don't feel that, like I really don't. Because why is this happening? And so I got in there, and I was like, you know what? This is the exact attitude that the devil wants me to have. So I'm just going to believe and declare healing all over my body. And that's what I did all day Tuesday. Like, I straight up fasted, worshiped all day. It was just scripture after scripture, declaring over my body. And so I got to the emergency room and, of course, had to drive myself. And that was a whole nother experience because I had been exposed to COVID. And I was in the waiting room and I felt like a warmth come over me. Like, it was like all around here, it was like straight warmth. And then every cramp, every ounce of anything went away. And I sat there in that waiting room and I cried because I knew I had been healed. Like, in that minute, I knew that my body was healed. I felt it. It was so, like, it was God. And I've like physically felt his hand on my womb. And so when I got back there, I had passed the most blood that I had, like, combined. And they did the ultrasound and the baby was gone. And I was so confused, but I was also like insanely numb from just like everything. Like, 2 weeks before, we had to put my first dog down, and then my husband had COVID and my son. And then like, it was just like everything was hitting me at once. So instead of like just feeling the devastation, like, I just locked up. And they were like, you're too far into this process for us to do like a DNC or surgery, which is basically what they can do to like remove the fetus for you. But so they were like, do you just want pain medication? And I was like, I literally was just like, no, I want to go home. And because I think if you don't go through a miscarriage or really understand a lot about miscarriage, you think that you just like kind of lose the baby and that's it. And that's so not true. Like, your body is processing that for like weeks after. Like, it's not just a simple like one and done. So it's painful, it's emotional. And I was driving home and I was so angry at God, like so angry at God. And then as a Christian, I felt guilt for being angry at God. And it was like, I had so many emotions that I didn't even know like what to do with them. And so on my way home, I just kept hearing like the Holy Spirit tell me, Eli is with me. Eli is with me. And I'm like, who the heck is Eli? And so I realized like, oh my God, that's my son. And so when I got home, like, Blake is still quarantined and I'm just like up there, and he's trying to be there for me and I just wanted to be alone. And so I looked up what the name Eli means, and it means ascended. And so I, at the time, was reading the Bible in 80 days with a group of friends. And so every morning at 6:30, we'd get up and read for an hour. And the day before I lost my son, I read the passage. I think it's in 2 Kings, and I could be way off because I did not look it up to remind myself. But this woman where Elijah comes up to her and is like, her son was not doing well and her son actually died. And so Elijah came and asked her, how are you? How is your family? How's your son? And she responds and says, all is well, knowing that her son had died. And I was like, that hit me. And that was my, like, you read in that 10-minute segment, and that was what I read the day before I lost my child. And when I called my friend, she was like, do you remember what you read yesterday? And it took me back to that. And I just kept rereading that and how she just had such peace about saying all is well. And she told me, I told her, I was like, I'm so confused because I genuinely thought I was healed. Like, why? I got frustrated because then you feel like, you hear some people that are like, well, if you just have enough faith for it, you'll be healed. And I'm like, well, like, what do you want from me, God? Because I'm I'm faithful, and I believed it. And she was like, I really believe that that warmth you felt was God taking your baby into heaven. And if you think about it from like an outside perspective, we really never know what that feels like. But because you were carrying him, like you physically felt that experience. And Eli means ascended, and your son literally ascended from your womb into heaven. And I was like, okay, that's great. But I'm pissed.
Yeah.
Like, I am mad. I wanted this. I believed for this. And, like, why did God let me down?
Yeah.
And when you've been walking with the Lord for a long time and you serve and you love the Lord and you, like, feel all the things that everyone feels, and then you feel guilty for feeling it. And then you doubt, like, am I really where I'm supposed to be?
Mm-hmm.
And so then it was like, are you even in relationship with God for you to be angry at him? So like all of this stuff starts creeping in. And spiritually, like, I know that's not true, right? But I think that, like, as Christians, we just carry like so much guilt for feeling emotions that we're allowed to feel.
Right.
Like, I'm allowed to be angry at God. I'm allowed to doubt God. I'm allowed to be upset. It's what I do with that that's sinful.
Right.
But the actual emotion is not sinful. And if I wasn't in relationship with him, how could I be angry at him?
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like a radical change that I never thought I would experience. Which, I heard about people that have had miscarriages before, and just being like super real, I felt like bad for them, and I really felt that empathy, but I never understood like how much it actually felt. And luckily I was surrounded by some really amazing people, but I also had people that were like, well, you can have another baby. Like, God promised you this, and you'll have a rainbow baby one day. And I'm like, I don't want to hear that. Like,
right.
I just lost my child. And, I didn't really even know what I wanted to hear. So, having to do that all alone too, and like isolation, like I felt like I knew God was there, but I didn't really feel like he was for me. Because I was like, if you're for me, then why did this happen to me? Because I don't get it. So I sat in that place like for so long of just, why? Like, why? These are things that you've promised us.
Yeah.
Why did you do this? Why did you let this happen? And it just didn't really feel real for a while. And I like walked in numbness and almost like, I don't want to say like fake faith, but like I also felt like, because of my role in the church and like, what we do in ministry, that I had to walk in and be like,
pretend.
Yeah, like God's faithful and God's good. And I know that he is.
Right.
But I didn't feel it, And so it was just like this incredibly weird dynamic.
Yeah. I think probably everybody in this room, everyone listening, has probably like gone through something, maybe not a miscarriage or something that's serious, but I think everybody walks through that moment where they're like, okay, you're Jehovah Jireh, but where is that happening in my life? And, you're the healer, you're the provider, you're this, you're that, and like, where are you, Lord? And I think we all kind of have that moment of like, just major doubt with the Lord. And I can relate so much to you feeling like you have to be perfect, because my role at the church was the same way. When I was on staff, at a church, I constantly felt like I couldn't really be myself. It was like I had to put on a show and make it seem like everything was okay all the time, and you know, I wasn't struggling with anything. And recently, I was thinking on something that really bothers me internally, just like personally, and I was thinking about how I don't really let anybody know that it bothers me, because I'm just, my personality type, I'm a very like perfectionist. So I don't want anyone to know if something. Are you
a type 1 on the Enneagram?
I'm a 2.
Okay.
Yeah. And a Virgo.
Yeah.
While we're at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very like, I don't want anyone to know if something's going wrong. I'll figure out a way to like hide it. And I just felt the Lord say, like, you know, you can pretend for them, but you don't have to pretend for me, you know? And it's such a peaceful thought to know of, like, I feel like he said it to me in that way of like, I know you want everyone else to know, which is fine. Everyone else can think that you're perfect or whatever. Yeah. But you don't have to act that way around me.
So true.
You know? And I think that it's really hard because it's something you have to personally grasp. Like, that he does understand, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, like miscarriages is like you lost a piece of you, and you lost, you're grieving as if that was somebody growing in you. So it's like, you lost your son, and so there is like a grieving process that goes along with that. So how did you not get over it, but how did you kind of handle that grief of losing your son?
Yeah. So where I was staying in the grieving process was exactly what we were just talking about. Like this, I've got to, you know, put on the garment of praise and, and all of those things that are so true. But like, I was not feeling that, you know? And eventually I just let the Holy Spirit minister to me and speak to me. And that's when I realized, like, you are so frustrated because people are coming to you telling you that, like, all is well and that God will restore this and all of these things. So if you know that that's not what you want to hear, then why are you ministering to people the exact same way? And I was like, yep. So I got extremely vulnerable and just started sharing. And luckily I had actually filmed like the whole process of my miscarriage, because that whole time I was like on YouTube trying to figure out like, what do I do? Is this, you know what I mean? Like, has anyone shared their story? And like, no one really like shared like the ins and outs of it. It was more like a testimonial video. And I was like, no, I gotta like document this for myself. And so I used that to minister to people and be like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to be upset and angry and devastated and like feel like God has turned his back on you. And we can't dwell there, right? But like, it's okay to feel that way. So I think once I felt that, I never felt that a human being released me to do that. Exactly like kind of what you were talking about. I felt that God released me to do that. And so once I felt that, I was like, okay, like, I don't understand. And I think like so many times we look for answers and we look to God for like, why did you do this? And that's not promised to us. Like, every answer to every question while we're here on this earth is not promised to us. But what he does promise is that I will wipe away every tear. I will be with you. I am the comforter. I bring you peace. And we get so wrapped up in the why and the questions and needing to know, instead of just walking in arm, crying with the Lord and just needing him and using him as our comfort and our peace. And so I was like, that's the only way I'm going to be able to do this. And thankfully, because Blake and I had gone through so much earlier in our marriage, I know that for a lot of people, this can really like drive a wedge in between husband and wife. But fortunately for us, it just drew us closer because we learned a long time ago how to fight, and it wasn't each other. It was the devil, you know. And I remember this sermon that I heard from Pastor Stephen Furtick that was like, you know, husband and wife feel like they have to fight head on, right? Like looking at each other, but really you're supposed to turn your body and fight off the enemy. And so because we had learned that, because we learned that the hard way earlier, we were able to do that through losing our child. But pretty quickly on, we actually got pregnant 2 weeks after I miscarried. And that was not our intention. I almost was not ready for that. But I was also so grateful and scared. And what if this happens again? And God, if you're okay with this baby living, why weren't you okay with the other one living? Like, why? You know, because we know that like God doesn't do bad things, right? But like I'm always like, hello, you like step in here. Like the devil is beating me up. Like, where are you? Like, come on. And so I, you know, it in a way, when someone should be like so excited to be pregnant again, it like brought back all of that anger towards God of like, why is this one better than the other one? Like, why are you letting this one be okay? And it like broke my heart and still does, because I like think about my baby that's in heaven and I'm like, why couldn't he be here? And why does she get to be here? Which I know like sounds so weird, but as a mom, it's like you are like protective over all of your children, no matter what. And so, you know, it was just like this fear of, is she going to be okay? And then also mad that she's going to be okay and he wasn't. And what did I do wrong? What did I do differently that I can carry this child and I can carry Leeds, but I couldn't carry Eli? Right. Like, I don't get it. And then, you know, we would tell close friends that we were pregnant and to be praying. And, you know, people would be like, Marianne, that's a little too soon. And like, you haven't grieved yet. And I remember just like sitting there wanting to shake people and be like, do you think I wanted this? Like, do you think I got on my hands and knees at night and like just lost my child and asked for God to give me another one, like right away? Like, do you think I asked for this? No. Like, I didn't ask for any of this. I'm just sitting here doing my best. And it was just this like weird season of radical emotion. Like being so excited, being devastated, being so excited, being devastated, feeling guilty for feeling all of those things, like loving and clinging to the Lord, and then also just being like, can you just like get away from me? Because you have made me angrier than anybody else right now, and I don't even want to be in your presence. Yeah. But then also like 5 minutes later being like, oh my God, Lord, I need you. Mm-hmm. You know? And so, I mean, I'm 7 months pregnant now, and this pregnancy has been honestly like the easiest pregnancy ever. I haven't gotten sick once. It's been a total breeze, and I'm grateful for that. But I'd be lying if I sat in this chair today and said that there wasn't a piece of me that was still mad at God that I had to go through that. Because I'm still mad, and I think I'll always still be like hurt and mad, and I'll never understand. Mm-hmm. But I have gotten to the place where I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with not knowing. Yeah. And that's really hard for a control freak, Enneagram type A human being to like be like, okay, I'm mad, but I'm okay with not knowing.
Right. Right. Yeah. I love how vulnerable you're being about just the emotional process of it, because miscarriages are very common. Like,
yeah, 1 in 4 women.
And my mom had miscarriages, and a lot of women, struggle with them, and or have had one, not struggle with them, have had one, and and it's just one of those things that I don't really know if maybe a few people get an answer for why they miscarried.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times they don't know. It's just
there's no
happened.
reason.
Yeah. And so it can leave a lot of questions and stuff that you just don't get over. Like you said, I think the difference is like when somebody passes away of old age, it's like, well, they lived their life. Yes, you miss them. My grandpa passed away.
Yeah.
I miss him dearly, but it's like, he lived his life. So there's some peace knowing that he lived a full life. He had a family. He was loved. And then he passed as an old man versus a child or someone that's unborn passing away. It's like they had so much potential, and you're like grieving the fact their potential.
Yeah.
And as a mom, I'm sure it's even more severe, because like you're saying, you have that like motherly protection of all of your children. But I did want to talk about just how it affected your husband. I know you brought up that it brought you guys closer, but I think I want to touch on that because it does drive a wedge in a lot of relationships, and I just want you to share on how that affected him and y'all as a couple.
Sure. Yeah. No. So, Blake and I have had like a lot of open dialogue about this because, like I said before, like we do have a very healthy marriage now because we fought really hard for it. It was almost better that we got all that crap out of the way in the beginning rather than like 10, 15 years in. But, it was difficult because as a mom, you feel the child in you. And as a father, it's more of an idea of the child. And there's a different connection. And I'm not saying that Blake was like disconnected by any means, but it's just it's a different level of feeling loss because you are, as a mom, you are immediately connected to that child. As a dad, I don't really feel like you feel that connection until the baby is born, as strong as the mom. And that's God's design, right? Like that's, I never wanted to hold Blake accountable for feeling as depth of a loss as I did. But I think what he talked about was so interesting was he had to witness me go through that and me feel everything that I felt and not really know how to be there for me. Like he knew how to be there for me as a husband, but when you go through that, he didn't have anything to compare that to, right? So also with him having COVID, there wasn't much he could do except get on FaceTime and, have me put pizza boxes at the front of the stairs for him to climb up and get dinner that night. And he felt like he had his hands tied behind his back, and he felt this heaviness of like, I want to be there for her. I also can't be there for her. And I also don't know how to be there for her. And I think if we didn't go through what we had been through before, I think we would have hated each other. Like truly, I think we would have blamed each other. I think there would have been so much hostility. I think there would have been so much misunderstanding. I think there would have been so less grace than what we had for each other. Also in that moment, because I was so angry at God, I look to Blake as a father because I don't have a relationship with my biological father too. So it was almost like I went to him for counsel, and so he felt that pressure too. And it's not your intention to like burden your husband, and it's not a burden, right? But it's like, it's just this really weird dynamic of how do we move on from this? But I will say what we both said was like, looking at our son, because he was 9 months old at the time, like we both appreciated and had like a new level of love for him. Like, and I'm not saying if you never lose a child, then you don't really love your,
Right.
but like going through that, every time we looked at Leeds, it was like this newfound depth of thankfulness and gratitude. And I think because we shared that and we were like, okay, let's focus on our son and let's focus on our marriage and let's just grieve and go through this together. It made all the difference. Because I knew that my body could do it because it had done it before. But like I said, like if it would have been before I had my son and before, Blake and I had gone through everything that we had gone through, it would not have been pretty. And so I understand when people are like, my marriage feels like it's falling apart because I lost this child, because there's an absence of grief and understanding from the male perspective. And then as a wife, your instinct is to take that out on them.
Do you feel like you felt, I don't know if shame's the right word, but like, because you're the carrier of this baby, did you feel like shame or like that you're unfit to be a parent?
For sure. For sure. Yeah. So much shame. Well, and I think that if you don't go through infertility or don't go through miscarriage, we know that like God has designed our bodies to get pregnant and give birth. And honestly, like there's almost like this entitlement that we're entitled to it. And it's not really true,
right.
So I even when I was told like that there was a chance I would never be able to get pregnant, I still felt like, okay, like my mom got pregnant with all three, me and my two siblings, while on birth control. So I was like, shoot, like it runs in my family. I'm good, we'll be fine. And that was just like not the case. So I carried this shame, and I don't think like until you really go through that, you understand how easy it is to lose something that you loved so much that there was nothing that you could do about it. Like nothing. I mean, because I went to the doctor, it was crazy because obviously because of COVID, they wouldn't even like see me as a follow-up until after like the 2-week thing. And so they were like, we'll do a full workup. And there's like, but there's no reason why. And so, but in the back of your mind as a mom, you're like, no, but my body was built for this. So like there's got to be answers. And you like fight to try to find out what those are. I have a lot of people close to me that have had multiple miscarriages or have been trying for years and can't get pregnant. And I think that we take the gift of life for granted as women sometimes because we just know and believe that we're automatically equipped for it. And we are to a certain extent. But yeah, there's a lot of shame. But what I would challenge people that feel like they either look at it as, oh, well, you did something wrong, or, oh, were you following like every rule? Like with my son, I ate sushi when I was pregnant, like I like broke all the rules because my doctor was like, you're fine, don't worry about it. Like, don't go overboard. But I did everything right with that pregnancy.
Yeah.
And like, it still ended in the result that it did.
Yeah, I just think it's like so inspiring to hear you talk about it in the way that you are, because I think a lot of people that I've had on the show so far, it's like they're past that point of, God, healed me from this, or God got me through this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like with the loss of your child, it's almost something that you really never get over. It's really something like what you're saying, and you being vulnerable to share those emotions, I think are really going to connect a lot with people, and a lot with women too, because like we said, it's very common and just not talked about at all. And I think the shame plays a really big factor in it. Like someone could have a miscarriage and have no idea.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no idea. I mean, I had so when I finally, how I was talking about when I felt like the Holy Spirit was saying you need to be open about this and minister to people how you are craving to be ministered to right now. I had so many people in my DMs oh my gosh, I went through a miscarriage. I had no idea. And I thought I was the only one, Mm-hmm. But I think it's so important to talk about, and it never goes away. I mean, my son was supposed to be born on July 4th. That's next week. So I think about that, and as I'm, getting the nursery ready and getting all of these things, it's he should be here. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that it'll ever go away. Honestly, when people are oh, how many kids do you have? I just want to be 3. And people are well, I see 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. So where's number 3, But a couple years ago, so I'm pregnant with a baby girl, and a couple years ago, I was reading and studying in the Word, and God kept putting this name on my heart, over and over and over again. And I'm I don't think that's in the Bible. I don't know what this is all about. And I just felt I was supposed to name my little girl that one day. So her name is Rhodes, Rhodes, which I looked up back 2 years ago, and it means a clearing in the wilderness. And I was oh, that's so sweet. Mm-hmm. Her purpose in life is going to be a place of relief and restoration for people that are going in the wilderness seasons in their life. And it's just so crazy how God is so prophetic, because she is actually that for us. Mm-hmm. That clearing in the wilderness. We still feel the wilderness around us out of grief for the loss, but we're experiencing that relief through her life, which is beautiful that I have that to cling to. And I'm so grateful that I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us, and just being vulnerable with us and everything. One last question before we close out. If you could say some encouragement to a mom or a family out there that is going through miscarriage, or maybe has lost a child, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that I'm sorry. And I know that those words can fall flat sometimes, but I just wish that when I was going through it, that someone would just look at me and be I'm so sorry. And I think that we have to provide all of this verbiage and this encouragement and this, read the scripture and God's got this. And I don't know, because I don't know what his plan for you is. I don't. And I don't want to say any empty promises that God will restore. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I know that he loves you. And I know that he is sitting there wiping every tear from your cheek. And I'm sorry that you have to go through this. I really am. And I get it.
Yeah, that's so powerful. But thank you so much for for sharing, coming on, and
Yeah, of course.
I really think that there's going to be lots of women and families around the world that are going to be impacted by Eli's story, even though he never took breath here on earth, the testimony that you guys carry through him, I think is really going to impact a lot of people. I truly believe that in the bottom of my heart.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the Dare to Love podcast. I hope it blessed you and challenged you. Make sure you visit the description below for all our helpful links. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new content from us. And follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook so you can stay updated with everything we have going on. And we'll see you next week for an all-new episode of the Dare to Love podcast.